Animaniacs, issue 37. The story starts out in a really boring way because Brain's being recorded and talks to the audience in a boring way, and we don't know what he's up to. How to get a TV show. He clearly looks sad as he asks kids to be his neighbor and says they have a fun show for them today. He wastes time describing what he's gonna do, and then a toy train comes out of a mouse hole in the wall with a message for him. Brain says that he's gonna take over the world today instead, and asks kids to bring their parents to the TV set. His right eye looks weird, and Pinky shows up holding the script Brain was reading off from afar. With his excellent vision, Pinky points out that the kids could just switch channels, and Brain says the kids will listen to him just because the public believes whatever it sees on TV. What does that have to do with that? He plans on using a hypnotic device with a bad name. Did he use the device to get a TV show? Because he's got no credentials. He tells Pinky to keep those cue cards in order, and he trips on a wire and drops them and gets them mixed up. It sure is a shame for him that he didn't leave the TV part to Pinky, which would have been better because Pinky's entertaining, so he'd be charismatic as opposed to him. He says the wrong things, and then yells at Pinky to quit fooling around while he's being recorded, which of course wouldn't be charming for the audience. Pinky apologizes, and Brain says he'll handle this himself, and says they don't have any commercial breaks, so they have to keep rolling. And he naturally assumes the kids would stop watching if he gave Pinky the time to get the cue cards in the proper order. But this is a Mr. Rogers style show, so they have literally nothing else to watch for their age group. Brain hesitates before saying they'll follow the trolley back to the land of suspended disbelief. Pinky says he doesn't know what button does what. To be fair, he's forgetful, so he'd forget even if he was told. He finds the big red button irresistible, and that stops the train and throws Brain off it. Pinky laughs and is proud that he filmed it instead of being remorseful, and since Brain can't be trusted not to hurt him, I can't blame him. It's impressive that Brain keeps his composure instead of yelling at Pinky, and lies that was a stunt he planned with him. This kind of slapstick is great because it entertains the audience. He talks about a castle with his device to take over the world. He tells Pinky to lower the drawbridge, and of course it lands on him because he didn't have the common sense to not stand in its way. He says he should have seen that coming, and the trolley hits him because Pinky forgot to stop it. Brain seems to wisen up here by asking Pinky what that was for, instead of assuming it was an accident like always. But it's a stupid question that he should know the answer to. He wisely tells Pinky not to do anything while he'll explain his device. He talks to a puppet shaped like a king, and you can clearly see Pinky's arm under it. And he doesn't respond until Brain says that he meant he doesn't want Pinky to do anything wrong. Brain thinks it's jeopardizing his plan, but it's really keeping the ratings up with comedy. He tells Pinky to stick to the cue cards. The audience would hear that, not that it matters. Pinky says he can't see them from down here because it's too dark, and I giggle at that as Brain tells him to improvise. Why is Brain telling the audience that his hypnotic device is going to send out a pulse ray through the TV to actually brainwash the audience? To be fair, the parents would assume it's all just a TV show, but it could freak out the kids, and get them to turn off the TV anyways. If Brain could do this whenever he wants, why doesn't he tell Pinky to start the machine much earlier? He has no reason to explain his device whatsoever, but it's nice of him to thank the kids who helped him and call them wonderful neighbors. It makes him the bad guy, of course, to say they'll be servants. Normally the implication is that he wants to make the world a better place, which he literally said in the show. Out of complete nowhere, Dot from Animaniacs mentions a pledge break behind him, when she's not supposed to be here or anywhere near him. And as she's pleading for donations to PBS, the brainwashing machine's active. The only excuse for Brain not trying to stop her right away is that she's taller than him, so he naturally assumes she'd beat him up in a fight. This could be solved right away if Brain had a stun gun, freeze ray, or had sleeping powder with him, or sneezing powder. Sure, he didn't know anyone would show up, but he should always have that in a pocket with him. It'd be smart of him to always wear a little backpack so he could keep stuff in it. This is a little annoying because it's a complete diabolic ex machina, so it is good that he was written to say he was going to make kids his servants to demonstrate that he shouldn't be rooted for here, and Dot is the hero. She says that for $100 a kid can have his own show. That'd never happen. Then the building explodes because the device overloaded for no reason. And Brain says that's why they only got the one transmission out. Why isn't she still bothering them? I guess the reason she doesn't always bother Brain in-universe is that she and her brothers would get bored of always annoying one person. Will they never get bored of bothering the scientist or two other guys like Ralph the guard? They have to deal with them because they live so close to them. I guess they can't get bored of annoying one person. And it's more like, in most universes, she doesn't live anywhere near Brain. Somehow, Brain thinks his plan didn't fail when it was immediately obvious that it failed as soon as Dot started asking for donations after the brainwashing device was turned on. Because Brain didn't get a chance to say what he wanted to happen while the device was on. He wasted time saying it before, when he'd have to say it again, for no reason. Surprisingly, Pinky says that he still has the cameras rolling after the building was destroyed. They waited for 20 minutes for nothing, and then encyclopedia salesman bothers them at the door. Pinky annoys them with relevant dialogue, asking if he can do cartwheels. The salesman asks if this is Mr. Brain's house or Mr. Bean's. How did Brain get his own house? He probably used the treasure or money he got from a scheme, but the reason he stays in his lab is so he'll keep having access to invention materials and getting more, and get provided with food and water for free. Naturally, the salesman gets mad at Pinky. It's surprisingly nice of Brain to interrupt him when he's about to insult Pinky's looks and tell him to leave. Then Dot shows up at the door with a cancellation notice, because she needs the space for their new half-hour commercial for Brain's hypnotic device. All of the parents want one because it made their kids quiet. That's shocking. The most abusable device he ever made, and it's going to be sold to someone. Wait, it got blown up at least. So how did Dot or the parents think anyone would be able to buy it? I guess what Dot really means is that someone got the blueprints for Brain's hypnotic device, and it's going to be recreated en masse for people. That's dark. Not every parent can be trusted with that. And she's going to use the salesman as the host for the infomercial, even though that's not his job. Dot surprisingly tries to help by saying Brain could take his show to cable for public access. Brain somehow refuses to, thinking it's undignified without explaining himself. And it's surprisingly heartwarming that ends with Pinky giving him a papier-mâché crown. Brain says it's wonderful and admits that he doesn't deserve a friend like him. It's a nice surprise that he clearly appreciates it instead of just dismissing it as silly. But how is it supposed to stay on his head? And Pinky's dialogue here would only make sense if he was being sarcastic. Aside from the bringing back a celebrity part at the end, the plan he suggested wouldn't be out of place as one of Brain's plans. Animaniacs, issue 43. It turns out Brain got the stains out of Pinky's clothes yesterday. It was unusually nice of Brain to do that. He says he's come up with an invention to let him take over the world, and somehow he thinks basketball shoes will do the trick, when nobody would ever waste a team slot on someone as short as Brain, because it'd be against the rules. It reminds me of an episode of the show that I fast-forwarded through from boredom. The shoes have TV dishes on them, and Brain says he'll lie that they're to receive radio sports broadcasts, while in reality they'll receive satellite signals activating springs, and his plan is to send everyone on the planet into the stratosphere and leave the world to him. So it's an uncharacteristically evil and stupid plan of his again, where once again he should know that if he had the world to himself, he wouldn't be ruling anything, because there'd be no people but Pinky to rule over. So what's the point? He could achieve the same effect by moving to the moon. Pinky says his plan's brilliant, which is nice of him, but totally wrong. And once again, it'd be out of character for him to be fine with the plan that involves Omnicide. So him still being happy about this only makes sense if he assumes he'll never succeed. He asks Brain how that remote could affect every pair of shoes on the planet. He's got a point. Only his shoes have soles with springs, not everyone else's shoes. And you'd think everyone else's shoes would need a way to receive satellite signals as well as springs. At first I thought his plan was to only send himself spring upwards to jump high at basketball. It's nice of Pinky to help Brain up. Brain says he already constructed a powerful transmitter for the shoes in an alley behind the lab. So the only way someone wouldn't steal it is if it was glued to the alley floor or insanely heavy. I assume it's at least waterproof. Brain says he'll rule the world if everyone wears his sneakers. He should know that'd never happen. Some people would want to be different, even if it became the latest fad. If the shoes were free, even then there'd be no chance of everyone wearing them. Like women? He'd have to brainwash everyone into it. And at that point, why not brainwash them to leave the planet or something worse? Brain says he needs someone to make all those shoes. Apparently he doesn't have enough materials to make them himself. Or maybe he's too impatient and cheap to buy all of those materials. He can make anything, so I guess what he really means is he needs someone to make them much faster in a factory. He heads towards Nike's world headquarters. Either he flew his plane there, or he's very lucky he lives in the same city as that tower. Piggy wonders how Brain could convince Nike to make his shoes. That's a good point, because he's just a talking mouse with no education and work experience, not someone they trust, who already has tons of shoe designing experience. He says he'll have to accept the shoes because they're so advanced. That's not too convincing to me. Obviously people buy shoes because of their aesthetic. People get kicked out of an open pair of doors by the president of the shoe company, and Brain walks into his office as he's demanding a new team of designers by the end of the day. Naturally, he tells Brain that he doesn't look like a shoe designer, and he likes his way of thinking. Brain shows him the blueprints to his shoes. He gets told to leave anyways. I wish he said it was because they'd be too expensive, so they wouldn't sell enough pairs. So Brain decides to buy a factory and make the shoes himself. Piggy wonders where he'll get the money for that. He plans to sue a tobacco company because he thinks they're giving a lot of money away these days. Brain tells some blatant lies to people in court that he and Pinky are the way they are because of tobacco. Second-hand smoke at that. That would baffle scientists, but there probably aren't any here. And they're giving people the only explanation available for why there's talking mice in front of them. At that point, the audience had no choice but to believe him. So they easily get awarded millions of dollars. I guess it'll all be gone by the end of the story. It sure is a shame for Brain that he doesn't think to do this way more often. Pinky's really forgetful, getting lost in his own thoughts a lot, so maybe it's believable that he forgot why he went to South America with Brain. Brain says they're in a country that doesn't exist in real life because it has the lowest property values in the world. I don't believe that South America would have the country with that problem. Their version of Earth sure is different. Because of the low property values in NAFTA, Brain says he was able to buy this factory for a low price. They shouldn't have none of the millions of dollars left by the end of the story. He's gonna trust trained iguanas to work day and night to make their shoes because it's cheaper. How could mere iguanas be trained to do something like that? It's interesting, but he should have just been written to hire humans. He confirms that elves exist on his planet, and he has a plan to hire a manipulative advertising agency to create demand for his shoes. An entire scene is completely wasted on boringness where he talks to a company president with an impossible name, who takes a while to start talking about an idea for an ad. Why should I care? Brain complains that his ad didn't show the shoes, so he should have known it was a stupid ad. Then the idiot considers celebrity endorsements. Yet somehow he's keeping sports players in a jail in his building, and somehow they're happy. They're shown a short basketball player, and told that the shoes will be shown to make him jump higher. Brain sees some people wearing the shoes on the street, and presses a button. Then he wonders what happened to his shoes as noises play, and Piggy says that he changed the plans they gave to the iguanas because Brain said that all people cared about was bells and whistles. So he took it too literally. That still doesn't have his mistake make sense. He should have known he wasn't allowed to do this. And it goes without saying that people would have bought the shoes even if Piggy didn't do this, because they never knew about the bells and whistles. If he thought he should do this specifically because people would want bells and whistles, then he would have made sure this was advertised as a feature. So Brain would have found out about this beforehand and it wouldn't have happened. Supposedly he had them included because Brain said that's all someone would want on shoes, but it only meant that's all the Nike president would want. And it doesn't matter what he thinks because he walked away from him without a deal. This story by Jeff Seuss is about Brain having his own style of Mr. Rogers' show and recording himself going to a hypnotic device to try to brainwash anyone watching it. Why didn't he just have the hypnotic device in front of the camera right away and use it and say what he wanted immediately? Every second he'd waste would risk the ratings going down from how boring he is. It's a good thing there was slapstick against him and stuff thanks to Pinky, because that kept things entertaining, resulting in them actually making a decent TV episode. But I have to wonder how they got their own show. And I can't believe that was never explained. I guess all Brain did was reveal that he's a talking mouse. But we should have seen that. His plan could have easily worked. Dot showed up from a different show entirely as a Deus Ex Machina to ask for donations to PBS. Since when does she work there? Let alone try to ruin Brain's plans. So it's good that Brain was suddenly written to say that the kids will make wonderful servants. So in this story, it's obvious that he should be stopped. This story was by Joe Edkin. That name sounds familiar to me. It's about Brain trying to get shoes made for everyone on the planet in an uncharacteristically evil plan to spring them away lethally and have the world to himself, which misses the point of taking over the world since there'd be no one left to rule it. Plus, he should have known there was no chance of literally everyone wearing his shoes. The story was too mundane and boring. Him visiting Nike headquarters ends up being pointless. He was clever in getting tons of money for a factory in just 2 panels, but then after he somehow trains iguanas to work at his factory, Pinky decides to replace the parts of the shoes that kill everyone with bells and whistles by changing the plans of the factory. This would only make sense if he did it to deliberately save everyone from Brain. The excuse he gives Brain doesn't make any sense. If Brain's plan was to send everyone springing upwards, and he could have that happen mere seconds, then it was obvious that Brain didn't really care about what those people would want in a shoe, and it didn't matter as long as they had already started wearing them. At which point, any extra effort made to ensure that they'd be something people would like would have gone to waste.